Go ahead and get started.
Okay, everybody ready? Ready. All right, it's 4:01 p.m. We will call this meeting to order of the Zoning Board of Adjustment. We will start off with Pledge of Allegiance. That's okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. First item is approval of the minutes from the April 15th, 2020. Is that right? 2021?
Does it say 2020?
2020, but it's 21.
We will make that correction.
Okay,
Thank you.
okay.
I apologize for the typo.
All right, so you were sent those minutes ahead of time. I will entertain a motion for their approval.
So moved. Second.
All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, wonderful. All right, now we'll enter into a public hearing to consider the request for a variance of the zoning ordinance section 118-429 to reduce the screening standards for commercial sites with residential adjacency for lot 2D, City Block 60, including a 1.2 acre tract of land, is described in a deed dated April 9th, 2021, recorded in document number 2021-2921 of the Nacogdoches County Deed Records located at 2720 Northwest Stallings Drive.
All right, thank you, Chair. Can everyone see the PowerPoint presentation on your screens? All right, great. All right, as stated, the subject property is located at 2720 Northwest Stallings Drive, approximately 630 feet south of West Austin Street. And this property consists of approximately 4.1 acres. The property is developed as an outdoor equipment rental business, which was constructed in 2015. The ZBA rules and procedures state that a variance may be requested whenever owing or to exceptional and extraordinary conditions, the literal enforcement of the provisions of the zoning regulations will result in unnecessary hardship in the development of the property. The applicant is requesting a variance to zoning ordinance section 118-429, commercial sites with residential adjacency. This section states that where non-residential sites are immediately adjacent to residentially zoned properties, a solid screening wall shall be constructed on the residential property in proximity to the residential property line, to be constructed on the non-residential property in close proximity to the residential property line in order to screen views and wind-blown trash and debris. In addition, a 10-foot wide landscape buffer is required with one tree planted for each 25 feet of common adjacency. The zoning ordinance also defines the screening wall as a fence that must be at least 6 feet in height and consist of either solid masonry material with a concrete foundation or solid wood fence with metal structural support. This screening requirement only applies to portions of the commercial property that abut properties that are zoned for residential uses. This includes R1 single family, R2 single family, and R3 two family. And this requirement is intended to screen all commercial activity from adjacent residential zoning districts. The subject property, as well as the properties to the north and south, are Zone B2 General Business. And as I mentioned earlier, this property was developed as an outdoor equipment rental business in 2015. The property to the north is vacant, and the property to the south is developed with a commercial office building, both of which take direct access to Northwest Stallings Drive. The property to the east is zoned R3 two-family and is a heavily wooded, undeveloped property. When the applicant developed this site in 2015, the site was permitted to meet all of our development standards that were applicable at that time. However, it wasn't until 2016 that the city adopted and updated our zoning ordinance to include the requirement for screening for commercial sites that are adjacent to residential zoned properties. So when the property was developed, this development standard wasn't actually in place. So it was adopted afterwards. So in terms of what that creates, it creates a legal non-conforming structure, and that's whenever you have a piece of property or a development that was illegal whenever it was developed, but because of action taken by the municipality or local government, the property is no longer conforming because of the new standards that it no longer complies with. So this would be a grandfathered in property and would only be subject to this requirement if it were modified or changed or an addition was made. So the requirement is being triggered by an addition to the property. Mr. Hammer, who is the property owner, is proposing a 1,900 square foot addition to an existing 41 square hundred metal building located on the southeastern corner of the property, and you can see this building on the site plan exhibit. This is the addition that triggers the residential screening ordinance, again, which wasn't a requirement whenever the original development was constructed. The portion of the property that's subject to this requirement is that eastern boundary, and we've highlighted that area in red, so you can see it on your screen. And based on the length of this shared property line, the applicant would be required to install at least 690 feet of screening fence, and then approximately 28 new trees to meet the current development standards, all just for a small 1,900 square foot addition. So staff finds that based on the proposed building addition, that the improvements that would be required to bring the property into compliance are disproportionate based on the impact, potential impact of the addition on the adjacent property. These are some site photos that we took earlier this week, and so these are photos taken from the street frontage, Northwest Stallings Drive. You can see that there's a lot of that commercial equipment for display, that outdoor large backhoes and things of that nature. Typically farming equipment, things like that. These are photos that were taken along the eastern property line, and so you can see that there's some clearing that's taken place recently. That property was actually recently purchased by the property owner and was cleared prior to the property owner purchasing that by the adjacent property owner, if that makes sense. So the adjacent property owner to the east cleared some of that property, and then Mr. Hammer purchased that in order to accommodate the building addition that we're hearing tonight. So just to give you an idea, a lot of this clearing was not done by the applicant. It was done by the adjacent property owner before he purchased that piece. These are just more photos along that eastern boundary line. You can see in the lower right-hand corner, that's the building that they're going to be adding onto. And you can see that fresh clay dirt, that's kind of the pad where they're going to be adding the addition. And then you can see the majority of the clearing actually took place on the adjacent property. So just to give you an idea of the conditions of the property, where that screening would be required. These are just some more photos. So if you're standing at that eastern property line facing Hammer equipment, that's kind of the view that you see along that property line. All right. So per section 118.99 of the Nacogdoches zoning ordinance, the Board of Adjustment may grant variances and exceptions upon finding that the following conditions that are outlined on your screen have been met. And these include the variance request being in harmony with the intent and purpose of the comprehensive plan, and that the variance will not substantially or permanently injure the appropriate use of adjacent property in the same district, that the variance will not adversely affect the health, safety, or general welfare of the public, that it will not authorize the use of, or not authorize those uses other than what is permitted under the zoning district, and that the plight of the owner of the property for which the variance is sought is due to a unique circumstance existing on the property and not due to a circumstance that was created by the property owner. And a sixth, that the variance is not a self-created hardship. And so in regards to criteria number one, the purpose of the residential zoning screening standards is to protect residential properties and screen those views of the commercial activities. Staff finds that the request does not increase the actual intensity of the existing commercial development and should not provide a hazard to the citizens of the community. It would not alter the use of the surrounding property. In regards to criteria number one, the properties to the north and south, again, are zoned general business. The property to the north is vacant. The property to the south is developed as an office. And again, the property to the east is zoned R3 2-family and is undeveloped and heavily wooded. A granting of this variance would not affect the appropriate use of the adjacent property or the inability of that property to develop in the future. A granting of the variance should not adversely affect the health, safety, or general welfare of the public. It will not authorize the use other than those that are already permitted under the B2 General Business Zoning District. The fact that the new building triggers, or the building addition triggers the residential screening ordinance for a non-conforming use really imposes some development standards that are disproportionate based on the actual size of the addition. And that's not a self-created hardship that the property owner imposed on himself. That was something that was essentially done as an act of the city by updating our zoning ordinances. Staff does recommend approval of the variance due to those unique circumstances of the property that we identified in the staff report, with the condition that the remaining trees that are located on his property be preserved to provide some sort of visual buffer and to break up the appearance of those structures in that commercial activity. We did send out 8 written notices to the adjacent property owners that are within the 200-foot notification area. However, to date, we have not received any inquiries or contacts regarding the request. And I believe Mike Hammer was intended to be here. He's running a little late, but
He's here.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see you. Yes. So
Saw that
So Mr. Hammer is here to answer any questions that the board may have. With that, I'll conclude my presentation, and I'll open up for questions from the board.
Okay, any questions, Elena?
Nope.
Okay, Mike, would you like to speak?
Yes, I will.
Okay.
I've contacted these three ladies that own this land behind me. I contacted them 4 years ago trying to buy some land. George Middlebrooks reached out to them trying to buy the land. They're not selling. They're very wealthy ladies in California. They did allow George to go on and cut the timber here 2 weeks ago because the timber was starting to die. They clear cut it, and you can see in those pictures, it's been 2 weeks and there's already privet hedge, sweet gum trees, all kinds of bushes growing up like crazy. Within a year's time, you're not going to be able to see anyway. So to me, it would even be better than a fence because there's nothing behind me anyway. There's not going to be anything behind me. I feel that the privet hedge and the stuff that's coming back up will actually act better than a fence would anyway.
Okay.
But there's no one behind me.
So the fence doesn't help you for security purposes
No,
or anything
no,
like that?
not at all.
Yeah.
No, especially with the expense of what lumber and stuff is right now. It's just gonna rot and become a problem down the road.
Okay. Okay. Any questions of Mike?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Appreciate it. Okay, now we'll open the public hearing to allow the public to speak for or against this matter. Is there anyone here that would like to speak? No one?
What was that?
We're opening it for a public hearing. If you are here to speak for or against this, you can. Please state your name, if you will.
I'm Ariel Hernandez, and my dad is Margarito Hernandez, the owner of the property next to Hammer Equipment. It is, on here it is Lot 2-A, Block 60. And we were wondering how the properties would be divided between the new zoning ordinance section that's going to be introduced. And is there going to be like a fence splitting the two, or what is,
Yeah.
What is
Elena,
gonna be
you
done
wanna
about-
answer his question, please?
Which property is it?
this right here?
Oh, you mean
We're-
this one?
yes.
Oh, okay, okay. Yeah, so, the variance is to waive the requirement for a fence along this side.
Okay, but this is our property right here, so.
Yes, and so it's not, it doesn't apply to this property, it's just that this piece.
Oh, is
So
this
there-
piece over here on the back?
Mhm. So there's no changes proposed to this
Okay.
one.
Okay,
And no zoning change?
okay,
Yeah,
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
okay. Thank you, Mr. Hernandez. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? For or against? Okay. Being no other, we will close the public hearing. Further questions from the board?
No, sir.
We'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we accept we accept the city's proposal to approve the waiver with the condition that the existing trees and shrubbery stay in place.
I'll second that.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion as to the motion and the second?
No, sir.
Okay. Hearing none, I'll entertain a vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any of those opposed? Okay, all right. Sounds good, wonderful.
I did just want to, while we're here, just remind some of the board members, Miss Rhonda Ward and Sarah Jones, your terms are going to be expiring in July. So if you would like to continue to serve, we ask that you please complete a board application. I believe, did you guys receive the email from Juan with the link? Okay, okay, perfect. So those are due by June 11th at 5 p.m. If you follow the link, you can just submit those directly online, hit enter, and it'll submit it for you.
Yes.
You don't have to print anything out or email it to Jan. So I just wanted to just remind the board while we're here to please be sure to submit those by June 11th.
Okay, and Elena, also, just a point, you probably are already working on this, but we've seen this come up twice recently. I feel like that this needs to be readdressed by the city and maybe broaden the scope a little bit.
Okay.
I don't know if any of you feel the same way, but it seems a little restrictive. And even when Jeff was here last time, he said that it was pretty much done for a specific purpose, and that purpose was met, but then now we're still dealing with it, so.
We are actually in the process of putting together a list of amendments to our zoning ordinances that would allow for more flexibility, allow for more staff administrative approval type items based on unique circumstances. All of those would be required to be approved by council, so they would go through a couple of public hearing processes, and then we can give you guys an update on that next time we meet, or we could, if you like, we can hold a special session afterwards, or email you, give you an update on where we're at with that, but that is something that we're working on. And specifically, we're looking at alternatives to the screening fence requirement, especially when it's a vacant, undeveloped property. So I think there's some special circumstances that we can just build into the ordinance without having to come through this public hearing process.
That would
So,
be great.
thank you, yes, and we'll keep you updated as we move forward with those changes.
Great. Thank you so much, I appreciate that. Anything else that needs to come before the board?
I did want to let the board know that I'm sure some of you know that we have been trying to move forward with some long-range planning initiatives, one of those being an update to our 2003 comprehensive plan, and the other being an update to our downtown master plan. And so we issued some RFQs. We received several responses from planning firms to do those studies for us. We conducted some interviews. Tuesday night, we had a workshop with City Council to talk to them about the progress that we've made so far, and then coming forward with a selection of a consultant. And so based on the feedback from that meeting, we're going to be having 2 public forums. One's going to be in downtown on June 7th, and the other will be at the Rec Center on June 8th. And they're really just public information meetings to update public about what we've been doing, kind of what to expect, next steps, and to get input from kind of their top priorities, what they'd like to see as part of the plan process, and just get some of that initial feedback up front. And so we highly encourage all of you to come. When we get more details, we'll actually just email you directly that information. But I encourage you to reach out to your social networks and encourage them to attend too, because we want to get as much participation as we can. So I just wanted to remind the board about that.
Okay, wonderful.
I think that's all that I have.
Thank you so much. All
Thank
right.
you.
Well, it is 4:18 PM. We will adjourn the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.